Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Jinhao Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then inked up this Pilot Metropolitan with a 1.0 stub nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. I always standardize some of my writing samples by using Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although I do use more papers, and some of those will be seen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I went out of my way to purchase this ink as cartridges after I had gotten a hold of the black ones. Let's see how the blue does. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, and the extra fine comes in at the same tone as the 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 10 seconds to dry. The medium comes in at the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. Tomoe River. That's not a bleed spot, that's a transfer spot from me. There's no bleeding, there's minor Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. Very nice color here. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 16 seconds to dry. The medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine, a little bit darker than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 28 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no real color variation, and we're not getting it. The color variation comes by nib, not in the writing. Rhodia. Not bleed through transfer because I'm sloppy. I try to be good about things, and I'm just a sloppy, filthy individual. It's just what I figure. Makes it easier. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shading, but the extra fine comes in at a lighter tone than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than the extra fine and a little bit darker than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 13 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this is a prime blue. It's not a mix of colors to get it. And we see a fairly even distribution of this blue as it moves up, so it's moving and bonding at rather the same rate. And we do see kind of a line across the bottom. Now the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, that blue line across the bottom is very dark, very there, not budging a whole lot, and the ink that hasn't managed to budge yet is what's pushing up in kind of a streaky form because it didn't dry 100% evenly across in that 10 minutes. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I was a little surprised about how this went. I thought it would hold up a little bit better. It does hold up and is readable. The lowercase h makes me worry about using it in a note-taking situation, but how light this ink got when highlighted is a reason I probably wouldn't use it as a note-taker. Water's lifting and moving away all of the darkest tones, but leaving a lot of those lighter blues very much in place.
Now the pen flush, if you look at it, with only 30 seconds, you just start to see a spot with the white of the paper coming through. It really makes me say that given more than 30 seconds, pen flush is all that you need to get this out of your pen. 1/3 bleach solution, although you wouldn't need it, does completely obliterate this ink from the paper, but there's no need to use that to get it out of your pen.
For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link a video where I show how I test it and how I calculate the data.
Jinhao's Blue has a viscosity of 2.55, making it normal.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all 6 of those numbers. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Jinhao's Blue has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Jinhao's Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now I wanted a nice magenta, and I went with Diamine Claret. The second writing sample is done on TWSBI and moleskin paper. And once again, as I was setting up for all this, I was really expecting bad things, and that was it for my additional writing samples. I was just so pleasantly surprised with it in my day of writing. Because I went out of my way to get this in cartridge form and test it because of how well the Jinhao Black did, I tested it with the same papers. Now I didn't have confidence about how the black was going to do, so I'd only used a couple of papers. The result here is I don't have as many papers to test this on, but they're the same papers. So we're looking at TWSBI Notebook. We get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is significantly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine. I think just a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. Now before I go to the last paper, we have consistently seen great color variation depending on your nib and flow, but otherwise this ink has performed really well. A sleeper people should be willing to try out. So the last paper that I tested before was moleskin, and you see that this says no, and it's got that was a transfer from a page that had really killed it. So the medium has a lot of bleed. The extra fine has a lot of bleed. A lot of bleed through. The medium stops you entirely from using the back of the page. I couldn't use the back of the page based on what's going on with the extra fine. But considering that this is insanely cheap ink, and it's done so well so far, I'm blaming the paper more than the ink. The medium at the top has quite a bit of feathering. No spread, halo, sheen, or shade. I wouldn't want to have to read that. That's gross. It's distracting in the medium. It's really its own problem. The extra fine has plenty of feathers, no spread, halo, sheen, no shade. It is a lighter tone than we got with the medium. The moleskin didn't do well with the Jinhao papers. More a problem with the paper than it was with the ink, and again, I don't blame this paper. I try to find inks that will work well for it, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Jinhao Blue? This was a solid performing ink. Again, I went in really with low expectations, expecting horrible things, and yet it performed very well, which left me baffled by some of the pricier ink makers that Jinhao Blue did as well as some of them. So what nib and pen would give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that I really enjoyed it out of a dry, broad pen. The color was fantastic. It offered the slightest bit of shading, which was very nice and again, unexpected with such an inexpensive ink. I put out a new ink review every single day so that if you're not already subscribed, I'm going to remind you, go ahead and subscribe.
Thanks for watching.